So today at the studio, I have Dana James. Yes.
Hi,
Dana
everyone.
James. This is exactly where you need to come for credible life advice. You ask the questions, and we're going to answer them. Dana, oh my gosh, it's such a pleasure.
Wonderful to be here now.
So Dana James, just for all of those of you who've been living under a rock and don't know who Dana is, she wrote the Archetype Diet, which is reclaim your self-worth and change the shape of your body, which has done phenomenally well. And you are a triple certified nutritionist.
Yes.
In functional medicine.
In functional medicine and trained in CBT.
In cognitive behavioral therapy.
Got it.
Have you?
Lots of modalities to pull from.
Where did you do your nutrition degree?
I did too. So
one was abroad, right?
I did my initial training in nutrition, psychology, and functional medicine. Was a 4-year program in the UK at a place called the Institute for Optimum Nutrition, and then I did my master's at Columbia, so in medical nutrition. And when did I finish that? A couple of years ago.
Oh my God.
Because, I'm a Wonder Woman. We'll get into this. Like, Wonder Woman felt good when they're educated and they feel intellectual. So for me, that master's was...
You felt like you needed the credibility piece.
I did.
Yeah.
I didn't. And
I know.
So, that was one of my own weaknesses. By the time I finished the master's program, which was a 4-year program, I was at that point where I no longer needed to be the best. I no longer needed to be the top student. And thank goodness for that, because I had a very big practice. And so at that time, during my master's, I was writing the proposal for the Archetype Diet. I was running a practice, and I was between
bi-coastal practice. Yes. FYI.
There was a lot going on. So by then I'd realized I didn't need to be like the number one student. And if I did, I don't know if I would have been able to have managed all of that.
But I think you're about my age.
Yes.
And so I think that I'm always impressed with people who come on here and they don't have the degrees. And they're giving advice.
Me too.
They're so confident. And I'm like, because we're trained, like, we have to have the degrees, and you're actually very careful about giving advice, and you're very measured about it.
Yes.
Right? That's been beaten into us. And also not to expose a lot of ourselves, generally speaking, is beaten into us also. And I'm just so impressed. I'm like, man. And now I mean, you and I both know you don't have to go and get fancy degrees to be able to prove that you can do this work.
Right.
Because running a private practice, that's the thing. Seeing patient after patient, I think that's what gives you the credibility, because you have the qualitative experience to know whether or not the practices that you're taught actually work for people on a practical level.
Absolutely right. And unfortunately, I feel like as a society, we don't value that.
No, I agree.
That's the difference. Like, anybody can become educated. Now, it's whether you can take that education and actually initiate transformation in somebody from an emotional perspective or a physical perspective.
So I think this book, and forgive me if I'm wrong here. I think this book, right when you told me about it, I thought she's on to something, especially for millennials, especially for the millennial generation, and a little bit younger than the millennials, because there's a lot of spiritual concepts infused in this book.
Yes. And I would say that the millennials really gravitate towards it because they understand the intangible piece. But it's also for women our age. Like, we're in our
I love to say I'm a millennial. I'm like a first millennial, but we're not. Technically, we're like very late Gen Xers.
Yes.
But we've always sort of lived a very millennial life. I feel like I identify as a millennial more than I do as a Gen Xer.
Gen X to me, it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Right. It's just like
a
term.
But
it's just like, well, what did Gen X do? Like, it's like nothing. We were in this transition between the baby boomers and the millennials, and we're like stuck straddling both worlds.
Yes.
And I think that's where the conflict comes for us. And also that's why this book is being so well received by our generation, because it's really merging the mind and the body. And I know we talk about this, but like, this is one of the few books I know which truly does it. And I was talking to one of the readers, and she said, your gem is that you put together the physical body and the biochemistry and the psychology.
So a lot of people sort of say that there's a mind, body, soul connection.
Yes.
But there's very few people who have the patience or the ability or the experience to put it into something like this where it's real.
Well,
I agree with that. In the wellness industry, I think that's true. Right. But it's like a cute soundbite to say like everything's like mind body,
which means nothing. Today,
which
really.
mean nothing.
Like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. But this is actually a mind body book.
Yes.
Yes. Very much.
And it's siloing it to make it easier for people. This is really why I wrote it for women, because there's so much information out there about what to eat and what things can go wrong in your body, and then what psychological issues you might have. That's all like the state of overwhelm. And with the archetype model, I was able to go, okay, this is your archetype. This archetype was created by where you source your self-worth from, which comes in from childhood. And then because of this imprint, you then have these behaviors that stem from that. Those behaviors include food behaviors. Those food behaviors change the hormones within the body, and then that changes the physicality of the body. So if you're looking at the physical body, you have to go all the way back to these childhood imprints to really unravel it all. Because far too often with a diet book, it's like, this is what you do. Right?
Yes.
And we're like, okay, we know that we're supposed to eat a plant-based diet and some protein, and there's some variations in it, but how do you do it consistently? Like, why does it feel like that your willpower drops off? Because there are other reasons behind it. Your subconscious is a huge activator of behaviors that take you outside of that. And where do those subconscious behaviors and thoughts come from? They come in from our experiences, from childhood, from our family, and from society. And so we need to go back and change them. So to give some context, I should probably talk about
talk about the. But I think what you're saying here is really brilliant on another level too, because you have to understand. This is going to sound so basic, and my former husband used to always make fun of me because he was like, "Your profession is like master of the obvious." I was like, "Yeah, but it's those things."
I love that.
It's true in a lot of ways, because it's like, lots of things that we say seem master of the obvious, but I'm telling you, practicing the master of the obvious isn't easy every single day. And it's so important to be reminded of those things. So for an example, like, again, we can be told we have to eat right, but why we eat the way we eat, we need to figure out.
Yes.
Else we'll just keep falling back into the old patterns and not losing weight or not transforming our bodies or our mental health through food, because you and I both believe that food is curative.
Yes,
incredibly curative.
It's the base.
It is the base, and unfortunately, unfortunately for us, we were on the end of the education spectrum where they were not teaching this in school. So we had to grab other degrees and figure out other ways to learn it as we started practicing, knowing that it really matters what people are putting into their bodies in terms of affecting their mental health.
Yes.
I hope to God that academia is starting to catch up to what the clinicians already knew 10 years ago.
I do feel it is.
I think it is, yeah.
I do feel it is. And like, I did my master's program at Columbia, as we just said, and that was through the physician and surgeons aspect. So it is the medical group that
community
of Columbia that is encouraging their physicians to actually study nutrition.
Yeah.
So we sort of talk about that.
Seems like, wow, that's such a novel idea, but it seems so obvious that we would have done that years and years ago, but we didn't.
We just have so much more research today.
It's true.
So that's why. Like in the 1990s, we didn't know that anything other than vitamins and minerals and amino acids and some glucose existed in food. Right. The mid 1990s is when we discovered phytonutrients. So that opened up a whole shift in our understanding of the physical body. Like then we were able to move away from the macronutrients of protein, carbohydrates, and fat and calories. Like that was the thought up until that time. It still pervades our cultural thinking today. It's an aspect, but there is so much more to food than that, because we understand this. We understand so much more about the composition of food
and the gut and gut health and how our body methylates food.
Right. 10 years. Well, we've known about that for. Naturopaths have been in that for 80 years or something.
Yes.
And functional medicine, so certainly that's at the basis of it.
Yes.
But the real research has come out over the last 10 years.
So tell us, what are the archetypes?
Yes.
Tell us what this means, the archetype diet.
Okay, so there are...
Because whenever I tell people the title, and they're like, what is that? Totally. And I'm like, I know, it's this like amazing thing. You can take a quiz and like figure out what archetype you are.
Well, archetype's a model. That's really what it means.
Yeah.
And so there are 4 archetypes. One is the Wonder Woman, and I'll explain a little bit about the Wonder Woman. So the Wonder Woman sources her sense of self-worth from success and achievement. So I'm a Wonder Woman, and certainly that was my upbringing. And if you're that type of woman, like what behaviors do you engage in? So you're in the pursuit of success. So you want excellence. You want to be the best. You want to be recognized for being the best and being influential. And so you're going to be working your ass off. You're going to sacrifice other things in your life for that.
Yes.
Like we know that in terms of eating, you will be a reward eater. You are going to be the woman who needs a glass of wine at the end of the night to wind down because you're just wired because of all the cortisol and adrenaline and noradrenaline. You want to eat dark chocolate, right? You're going to justify it because you're smart.
Like, what do you mean?
Other polyphenol
That's
content.
not me
Like,
at all.
I need to have that. And you're going to be really resistant to taking that out. Now, why do you want that? It's because other areas in your life are pretty depleted. So that real soft feminine side of you, which I would call the femme fatale when she's balanced, has been cut off. Like, who has time to fall into this sexy softness and even what I would call the ethereal, the intuitive space, when you're too busy, like, trying to achieve things and get things done. Like, you're in this very masculine, assertive, directed, let's go.
Right.
And the food is a proxy for that. It's never going to offer you the fulfillment that just winding down can. And if you're an out of balance Wonder Woman, you're like, I can't wind down. And I sort of like being wired in a way.
Right. I know, it's very addictive.
Then you start to notice, actually, things in my life aren't working. Like, my relationships aren't working as well as what they should.
Just to stick on the Wonder Woman body aspect, and I actually don't. When I took the test, I wasn't a Wonder Woman, which I was surprised at. And we all know we can all have aspects of these things, right?
Yes.
But what is a Wonder Woman? Because this is what I found fascinating when we met a few years ago, and you started saying, I'm fleshing out this idea for the book. What is the body type that you generally see in your office that's associated with a Wonder Woman?
So,
because that's the other part I want to connect is that you started seeing patients and saying, wow, there's like sort of a pattern here between the way that someone's personality is perhaps constructed, the way they eat, and where they hold weight in the body.
Completely. So they will tend to store it on their abdominal area, and that's the influence of cortisol. We know that cortisol, you will store it here. So if a woman is vain enough, which I actually like, she will be able to notice the body fat here and go, oh, that's my elevated cortisol causing my belly fat here. If I want to change my belly fat, I need to change the cortisol regulation. So what can I do in my life to start to shift that? If I'm not going to change how I'm working, can I start putting some meditation practices in, breath work, taking a little bit of time out, having a Saturday where I have no commitments? Like, you start to shift your life in the way that you want to because you observe something on your physical body. So we've sort of gotten to this point in society, which is, let's not talk about weight. Right? The weight's a bad thing to talk about. And instead it's like, no, like, let's just not judge it. Let's understand where it comes from. And if we understand where it comes from, we get to change it without being obsessed over it or frustrated with it because, you're following a low-caloric diet, you're eating the foods that you should be doing, you're following a ketogenic diet. It's not working.
Right.
It's not working because the cortisol isn't being addressed.
Right.
And so every archetype has a particular body type.
So for me, the cortisol shows up, my face gets really puffy. I have thyroid disease though. So I feel like when I am really stressed out, I start waking up and my face is like puffier and puffier. And I know that's my signal that not necessarily that I'm gaining weight. I don't judge it and say like, okay, well, have I been eating unhealthy because I've been really busy? Because generally I tend not to eat if I'm really busy. But
what's your archetype?
I tested as ethereal, which was super interesting to me.
Put you as a femme fatale.
I know.
You do have that ethereal energy.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't medicate through food, which is a little bit part of the ethereal archetype.
Not really. The ethereal tends to not eat. Yeah. Now she can numb with food. We'll stay on the ethereal.
Right.
So
but numbing with food is also by not eating. I would imagine that's kind of disordered eating, right?
Yes.
And I've never had an eating disorder, so this is all fascinating to me. Like, I always have had a generally healthy relationship with food, in part because I don't really care about food.
Well, that's it.
I care about food making me healthy, and I've learned to be a very intuitive eater.
Yes. So
maybe that's why I tested as an ethereal. But wait, let's stick on the, cause I don't want to confuse.
Let's stay with the ethereal then, because we've sort of spoken about the Wonder Woman. And so the ethereal is very light and airy. That's how she feels. And she is very creative and intuitive, very intuitive, hypersensitive to the world, However, the ethereal was normally like the weird girl that nobody really understood. Partially because like she looked at the world as though everything should be cohesive and beautiful. Like she's looking at it through that lens. Yeah, when she looks out and there's all this rupturing happening, it's like, what the hell is going on in this world? Why are there so many conflicts? And it's like, I don't know if I want to put myself out there because I'm so sensitive to those. And she can mask as then one of the other archetypes who take on maybe some of the Wonder Woman attributes, because that's what success is rewarded in our society, or the Femme Fatale, which is about beauty, or sometimes the Nurturer, which is about caring and giving to others. Right. But and she may stay in her ethereal ways, which is really wonderful.
So she's a bit of a chameleon, the ethereal.
Can be.
Yes. I see that about myself. Yeah.
And because she'll be able to figure out how to move into the situation to sort of feel like it's to be more accepted.
Yes.
Now the ethereal, because she's so sensitive, she needs to get grounded. So she'll often feel overwhelmed and anxious. She'll tend to suffer from gut microbiome issues and digestive issues. She can fall onto the side of some depression because her estrogen levels tend to be naturally low, and the estrogen's inactivated as serotonin. And there's some infertility and PMS and those things. So that tends to be the ethereal. The body type for the ethereal is naturally very lean. So it's very lean and light. And she doesn't have this focus on the physical body, like what you just said. You were like, I don't care so much about the physical body. That's the ethereal.
Yes.
Like the ethereal's in this realm is all in the intangible, energetic piece here.
Although I do want to say, and this is, it's so, one of the questions I had for you was, as you've written the Archetype Diet, and you don't have to answer this yet, and you start to see more and more patients who follow the diet, I follow, as you know, a very clean diet.
Yes.
And I don't experience anxiety or depression, really.
Oh,
right. I have very regulated moods.
Yes.
Unless there's some really external thing I can pinpoint, like my mother's quite sick with cancer. So I obviously know that brings me down, at certain times during the day or during a particular month. But when you do eat really clean or you follow the diet, a lot of those psychological symptoms and physical symptoms start to resolve, which was the point of you wanting to write this book, because you want to help people resolve whatever kind of body or mental health issues they're having, and you knew you could cure it through food and not necessarily psychiatric medication.
Completely.
Right.
And so this is sort of the issue with millennial ethereals. Right? They are being prescribed Ritalin or Adderall because they don't really have this ability to be able to concentrate, because their natural way is to be looking at this and looking at this, right? And that's like shoving them down the peg of something that is out of alignment with their natural way of being, forcing them to be, say, a Wonder Woman, and that has a whole host of issues that sort of show up 10 to 15 years later. So you're absolutely right. This is about the person rising up to the crown. So you're on a spectrum here. So how dysfunctional are you, right? Versus to how adaptive are you? Where are you? So you can be an ethereal and just be in this very positive, free-spirited, feminine, whimsical state without any symptoms. That is the goal. And most importantly, when you're like that, you get to add the positive attributes of the other archetype in.
Right. So because I can definitely be a Wonder Woman.
Yes, that's what you want to be.
And I really want to be the Femme Fatale because it's just the coolest name ever.
The positive aspect of the Femme Fatale.
The positive aspect. So let's go into the Femme Fatale really quickly.
Okay. So the Femme Fatale sources her self-worth from her physical body. And so when she's balanced, she's like very central and sparkly and wonderful, and you just want to be around her. She's like very magnetic.
Yes.
The downside is that when it is from the physical body, she's going to be much more critical of her own body. And so there can become obsessive thoughts about body and, that constant restriction, and then potential overeating because she's so restricted. It can be, and 80% of the time she can be thinking about food in the physical body.
It's exhausting. It's exhausting.
Absolutely. And I've seen Femme
so
Fatales
many, I know, in my office, like
adrenally fatigued, which is like, that means you're flatlining. Like there's very little cortisol and adrenaline left. And just because you're so focused on the body, right? That's it. That's all.
Where do they tend to hold their weight? The Femme Fatales.
So the Femme Fatale very much depends on their eating. So if they tend to overeat, then they're going to be a little bit more voluptuous, and they look more like the nurturer. If they're restricting their food, they might look a little bit more like the ethereal. That's not so much a directive body type because it does depend on the behavios.
Right. I can fall into that. Definitely.
Well, all of us can as women. For those of us who want to look good, there's no problem with wanting to look good either.
Right.
It's just when it becomes an obsession like that.
Yeah,
That's
no.
when we need to change, and we need to break that their self-worth is based on the physical body, because that's at the root of it.
Oh,
And that comes in from childhood.
And you know, it's really ironic, the way I was raised to be so achievement oriented, and I actually had, not my mother, but my father was incredibly fixated on what I looked like. I got in a car accident once, and the first thing he said was, I totaled a car, he said, how's your face? You know, it was like the money maker. How's your money maker? And so my friends always joke, they said, you know, you should have ended up with an eating disorder. But I couldn't, because I was an athlete.
Right.
And I knew I would like die.
Yes.
I was so hungry all the time. They always threw me into sports. And I think that really saved me in a lot of ways. And I know it can bring girls to the other side. I know a lot of women who are figure skaters and gymnasts and ballerinas who really struggle. And in my office, again, I cannot recommend this book enough, especially for the women. Because I want to cry, because you and I have sat with it for years and years in our office with girls who have fixated on food, and literally their entire day is spent at their desk trying to get some work done, but all of their mental and psychic energy is going into, I can't believe I ate that, I didn't eat that. And I think the body really starts to, again, adrenally fatigue, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here. And then what happens is they just start, the poor decision making gets put one on top of the other, because they're not thinking clearly anymore, because their brain is so depleted.
You are completely correct.
So to pull them out of that hole, for parents who are watching this, to pull them out of that hole and start to tease it out is a really difficult task.
Well, it's being aware that you don't want to not say to the girls that they're not attractive. So the femme fatales develop not because their parents gave them lots of accolades. Yes, that may happen. I've never seen it in my practice. I've only seen the femme fatales who never felt pretty, like never felt noticed.
Right.
And so their belief was they weren't pretty enough, and therefore they felt like they needed to do everything they could.
They need to overcompensate to become this beautiful woman.
So to me, it's always from the wound. I had one Wonder Woman in my office who her parents only ever complimented her on her school and never on her physical looks, and so she never felt beautiful because she wasn't used to hearing it.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
so we overcompensate, and if you're a mother out there, like what you really want to do is compliment your children on all of these 4 aspects, and those 4 aspects are being different, being like the ethereal,
the creative,
unique, and encouraging those ideas. On the femme fatale side of things, it is to allow her to receive these compliments about the way that she looks, and yes, give her accolades on her academic success, but it's not like, wow, you got to be great, but you should get an A. It's like, oh, great, right? Like, that's wonderful that you got that, is, you know, and how encourage her along the way. And then there's the nurture piece, which we'll get into, and the nurture is about really being kind and compassionate and loyal and having integrity. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So the nurturer is, it's a little bit more self-explanatory. The nurturer, obviously, and this is what when you were telling me about the archetypes that you were developing, I thought she's really onto something, because I had absolutely also seen that play out in my office, that these nurturers, these women who are giving themselves, giving love to everybody else, and not really working on self-care, feeling guilty when they did take any time out of self-care, really struggled with weight issues generally in the office. And they had a hard time saying no to people.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. So if your self-worth is given by doing things for people and people pleasing, the no for you can be very challenging, because you'll misinterpret that to be that you're not supporting the person.
Right.
That actually isn't the case.
Right.
So like the nurturer can really learn from the Wonder Woman, who's actually very good at no, right? The no is the boundaries for her.
Yes.
Right. So if you are constantly giving and giving and giving to others, and you can't receive because you feel like it's not your, it's like that's your role. Your role is to give. Then where are you getting your nurturing from? Who's like providing you that emotional support? It doesn't happen, right? If you don't allow it to come in, and so then you're going to want to accompany it, right? And if you can't do these things because you don't have time, because you're too busy giving to others, you're going to eat from a convenience perspective.
Totally.
So I have clients of mine where they know that they should be having the smoothie for breakfast or the eggs for breakfast, but their morning is absolute chaos because they've got the kids to do. They've got to make sure their husband's out the door.
Do you find that there's more nurturers who are mothers? Do you make that?
No.
That's not just because you practice in New York and LA.
No, I don't. So you can be a nurturer and absolutely be a working woman.
Right.
And you can absolutely be a Wonder Woman and have children.
Right.
So that's
right. So
not
you
the
see
case.
it, but you see it shit.
So you see,
right.
you see
yeah.
beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
And
I just asked that question because as I was like diving into a box of Cheez-Its last night, which is really rare for me, and it actually I have like allergic reaction to processed food, but I was so yeah, I do.
That is the case.
I do. I have like a canker sore in my mouth this morning that I woke up from eating Cheez-Its, but as a mother with 3 kids, I feel like sometimes it's so difficult to do food prep and to put myself first. And I don't normally feed my kids a lot of that stuff, but it was there in the cabinet and it was 12:30 at night and I was still working away and I grabbed a handful of Cheez-Its. And so I can't tell you how many moms I talked to were like, oh yeah, I lived off of goldfish, like off the table, you know, off their high chair for years.
Right,
and you're just grabbing food,
not putting time into
not radically taking care of yourself, which is what you need to do.
It's to allow yourself to take that time first and foremost. It's okay for you to take 5 minutes out to make yourself a smoothie when the kids don't want a smoothie, right? And it's that mental switch which is so essential. If you don't have that switch, then you're not going to do it because it's all too easy to grab the goldfish or your kids' leftover food and eat that for breakfast.
And I wouldn't even say it's okay to do. I would say it's mandatory. And this is where I come down on this as a mom. It's mandatory because food is so essential to your physical and mental health. That I always say to myself, I could grab the Cheez-Its, or I could not go to yoga class to be at a game or do something else and not take care of myself. But in a year or 2 years or 3 years, what's my likelihood of getting something like cancer? Because I haven't been taking care of my body. And that scares me. Right there, I have to scare myself into self-care. Because the long-term goal is to actually be there for my kids when they graduate from 8th grade, graduate from high school, you know, end up deciding to get married one day or have kids or whatever it is. I want to be there for it. So I take care of myself for the long-term plan for them. You can't just do the short-term fix.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you can get away with Cheez-Its, you know.
Everyone. You're not a purist. You're not a purist.
Yes. Not at all.
Yes.
Because that obsession will completely override the benefits that you get from being so obsessed, right? Because that's an emotional piece coming in, right? It's very constricted and tied. If that's the way that you're thinking, you fall into the Femme Fatale there.
Yes.
And then I think I was going to say, you were saying something, or talking about the nurturer.
Let me just ask real quickly, before we have to end, do you recommend, I know you do, but you recommend diets in the book so you test your archetype,
yes,
and then you decide what you are, and then you recommend food based on that?
I do. Yes.
Now, so the question I posed to you before is, now you're having so many women come into the office who have gotten the book, because how long has the book been out now? About
June.
about 6 months. Coming up.
I think,
June,
yes.
July, August, September, October. Yes.
Yeah.
And so you have more and more women coming in, but you're already testing these theories out for a really long time in your office.
This is a 5-year process of coming up with the concept and then looking at the childhood patterns all the way through to the behavioral and the physical body. And I started on the physical body. So I started on the physical body with the behaviors and then went backwards to understand what it was.
That was causing some of these patterns that you were seeing in women.
It's really getting to the root of it. And that's the basis of cognitive behavioral therapy and the basis of functional medicine. What's at the root of it? The issue with functional medicine is we tend to only go down the biochemical pathway.
Right.
So it's like, it's not just because the cortisol's high or the estrogen's high. Like, what's behind that?
Right.
And these diets here for each of the archetypes are based on what are the hormonal changes in the body because of the way that you're thinking in those behaviors, the lifestyle piece. So it's all tailored for the adrenals and the thyroid and the gut microbiome. So that's what it's designed to actually do, that's my demographic. So I am based in New York, and a large component of is Wonder Woman and nurturers.
Yes.
But I really think that that's what it is. Like, the quiz is online, and we have most of the 50% of the quiz is actually Wonder Woman, and then nurturers,
how people are falling.
How people are falling, and then
Interesting.
you have the ethereals, and then you have the Femme Fatales.
How many people have taken the quiz now? Do you know?
20,000.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, which is great.
It's so great because P.S. I have to tell you, this was not an easy book to write.
No, you were around when I was writing it.
And not just because I was around and I am a writer and know how hard these things are to do, but it's so comprehensive. Like, I would be afraid to do a book like this, right? I just would be. And you really dug in. It was like, this was a real, like, you just open yourself up and putting it out there and using, because it's not fluff. This isn't fluff.
No.
And there's so many practical tips, and there's science and experience behind the book, which is what I really love about it.
Yes.
Like, I don't think this is BS.
No
way.
Definitely not. You will know whether it is, right? Because truth resonates within you. So when you read it, you're either going to go, this is for me, or it's not. And I had one reader comment and say, reading this book gave her more insight into herself than 10 years worth of therapy. And to me, that makes me so extremely happy.
That's like the best thing that's not a therapist. People don't realize the best thing a therapist, generally, who's a good therapist, can hear is, you just sped up the process for me.
Yes. Like, I just get goosebumps when I hear that.
Yes. Because you're like, yes, you're not meant to be in my office for the next 25 years.
Right.
Because then we're not making much progress.
That's right.
Dana, what's in store? Can you tell us what's in store for you next? Besides the online, you can do this online now with you as well, right?
There's an advanced program that assumes that you've read the book. And that's actually, it's not online. I'm actually running it right now. It's a virtual program. And it's a little bit like a pilot to see how this goes, and then I will probably convert that into an online program.
So it's a masterclass essentially with you.
Yes.
And so that's happening now. Then you're thinking of maybe doing a digital course. Do you have another book in your future?
I'm not sure. This book it really took some time to write.
It takes a lot of time.
I mean, I certainly have products coming out. So I have, for my Wonder Woman, I've created an adrenal tonic, which is a really beautiful, delicious tasting tonic to help regulate those cortisol levels.
Do you still sell the beauty fuel?
I still have the beauty fuel.
I love that stuff. I need a few bags of that.
I will bring it to you. It's one of the best tasting protein powders.
So good, by the way.
And same with the adrenal tonic. Like,
there's no need to grab for the Cheez-Its when you have the beauty fuel in your closet. That's true. Yes. So some products coming out.
Yes.
And you're still running your private practice, which you're like so booked out, I imagine.
Yes.
But in New York and LA.
People,
you do. I know. You still love seeing people one-on-one.
Yes. I'm so rewarded by the transformation that my clients see. Like it's like a dopamine hit for me. I'm like, why would I want to change this?
Yes. Oh, you're such a gift. Dana, thank you so much for being Unscripted. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of Unscripted with Nell Daly. If you could right now, we need you to head on over and review us on iTunes. As always, we will personally reach out and thank each and every one of you who do so, but we'd love your reviews, so tell us what you think. And you can always send us emails with either guests you want on the show or comments or questions. We're happy to get those, and you can find those on the website. Our contact information at nelldaly.com. To see all of my comings and goings, get updates on who our next guests are going to be, and if you just need a little bit of extra life advice or inspiration, come join me over on Instagram at Nell Daly. I use Instagram every single day. Or like us over on Facebook, and you'll automatically be following us, and that's at Nell Given Daily. That's also where you can watch us live. Before I end, I want to thank our audio editor, Walter Eggers, our video editor and co-producer, Paige McGovern, and our video production manager, Rick Endiver, co-producer, Corey Pakowski, and the rest of the Point Zero Media team. I couldn't do any of this without you. I couldn't. Of course, Teachable HQ, you guys rock. They're an amazing educational technology company. Check them out. I use them. Everybody big in the business uses them. They're just awesome. And a huge shout out of gratitude. Huge, the biggest, to all the fans who are following the show. Just like I said last week, I am so humbled by how this is all going. Thank you. Until Monday, everybody, peace out. Have a fun and safe weekend. I love you guys already.